Okay guys, Mac with the Circle, and joining me once again is Sevatar.
Good day, Macca.
Good to have you on again, mate, and we're talking Horus Heresy books once more. So, on your channel, we covered the first sort of 10 books recently of the Horus Heresy novel series. And
it was an absolute beast of a video.
Yeah, I dare say we'll probably end up in the same situation again this time. So obviously we've read all these books. We're 30k fanboys in a way, and
yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, we do go into spoilers, but we obviously aren't going super, in depth on those spoilers or on our talking points. Generally, if we really like a book, we'll encourage people to read it, and if we don't really like a book, we sort of give the cliff notes and spoil it.
Yeah, it's more sort of a general gist of what's going on in the books, and just sort of our critique on them. How did we like them, etc. Obviously people are free to agree and disagree with it, because I'm sure they will. Just try and keep it civil.
It's subjective. We disagree with each other all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
The big thing with this is I get a lot of people ask me, I want to get into the Horus Heresy, where do I start? And it's not necessarily easy to say go from the start and read through, because there are a lot of books that you can just avoid, or are bad and not worth reading, or they're sort of pointless. And in this series that you and I have been doing, we just sort of quickly cover off on the ones that are really worth reading. Sort of what we say, is this good? Is this great? Is this mediocre? Or is this bad? It's pretty much our ratings. We don't do like a 5-star or a 9 out of 10 or anything like that.
Gets too complicated if you bring numbers into it. But yeah, as you just said, a lot of people, well, especially chatting to people on Discords, who are just getting into it, and they say, where shall I start? I'm a bit of a purist. I mean, I've got one of my friends, and I'm making him read them in the order they came out, because that was the way I did it. But I mean, I'd say as long as you sort of cover off on books 1 to 5, then you are free to jump around quite considerably from whatever takes your fancy at the time, really.
Yeah, one thing that has made the story a bit harder is that certain books, like one of the books we're going to cover today, The First Heretic, they're previous in the narrative. These events happened before other books that have already happened, because there's this sort of weird release schedule with Black Library, where it's like, the events of the heresy have already started, but then you'll go back 50 years in other novels. And so they can get a bit confusing. What we really need to do when you read through the novels is perhaps do them in a chronological order. I don't know, it's very difficult, because a lot of these books jump all over the place in time.
Yeah, I mean, there is a chart, sort of like the go-to chart for a lot of people, where you can just you can type it in on Google, and this like flow chart, if you like, and it helps you out with different people's character arcs, everything. If you're only interested in, say, a certain legion or a certain person, it's always worth investigating. I mean, I've seen a few charts where you probably need a degree in maths and chemistry to try and work it out, but yeah. But,
with that in mind, I guess we should kick it off.
So, number 11, Macca, Fallen Angels.
Yeah, what do you want to say? Good, great, mediocre, bad?
It was alright, actually, compared to Descent of Angels, which I'll briefly touch back on, which isn't everyone's cup of tea. Sometimes it takes a couple of reads to appreciate a book, but comparing it to the first time we see the Dark Angels, it's quite a lot better, I must admit.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you.
Stuff happens in the first part of the book.
Well, this time out we actually hang out with the Dark Angels, whereas last time we were hanging out with just some mortal dudes. So that's straight away, that's an improvement.
Yeah, and it was I quite liked it, and again, it's the sort of picks up from where pretty much things were near enough left off. Then you've got your two different story arcs. You've got the You got the chaps on Dymat, doing their thing, killing traitors, slaying traitors, and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got people back on Caliban just being incredibly mysterious and sneaky.
Me personally, I would call this a mediocre book still. Something about Gav Thorpe's writing. He's got basically one book that I really like in Heresy, and that's it. The thing with his books is they go off on these real tangents that overall are not really critical. For example, the discovery of, like, you know, the Ouroboros demon in Caliban and things like that, or like, is it a demon? I'm not really sure. Warp entity. It's vague, and the thing is, it's not a plot that you need in order to discuss the fallen angels or like the dark angels getting that rift. It's completely irrelevant to that. It's just shoehorned in and overcomplicating what's really a simple story.
Yeah, that's it. I do. I mean, I've met Gavin. He is a nice chap, and some of his books I've really enjoyed. So I'm not too sure about. And this is one of them as well. So I found this one a bit of a. I'd say it was all right. We'll just get into the meat of things. It's just, as you say, the sort of irrelevant little plots that sort of lead you off on a merry dance into nowhere, essentially.
Yeah, I think the one redeeming thing in this story is the end, where the sort of, I won't spoil it for people, but the very, very end of the book, the Lion gets a hold of something and then gives it to another Primarch, and it may not have been a very good idea.
No, probably not the best idea.
So
and
yeah,
it's sort of,
Fallen Angels.
It's a bit of, yeah. Next one, which I think we can both enjoy, though.
Thousand Suns.
Probably,
yeah.
Probably one of the standout ones. If you ask someone, what's your favourite Heresy book, I'd say half of them, at least half of them would say Thousand Suns.
It's surprising that so many people like this book so much. I like it, but it's definitely not my favourite.
It takes a while to get into it, but I really enjoyed it.
It's a very good book. It is up there, but it is not my favourite. Probably because the start is so slow, and it cares more about the remembrances and hanging around with them for a lot of the book. If I had to, pick on things that I dislike, those two facts are the things that I dislike. But otherwise, it's a very good book. Sets out the way the Legion works, what their hierarchy's like, how their psychic powers function, how they use them, how they conduct their way of fighting. Builds it up very clearly in your head, which is something that other books don't necessarily do, like Fallen Angels or Legion, for example, are not good books for building up the fighting style of their particular legions. Thousand Suns is the opposite of that. You learn a lot about them.
Yeah, you get a good look at. There's some very rich characters in this book. Obviously, I know you weren't a massive fan of the Remembrance a bit. I quite like that as a nice little diversion. Everything to see how. Just to see how the Thousand Suns interact with humans and everything. As you say, it's good when you see like how they actually employ their powers in battle, because it's something very impressive, considering there's never too sure on Thousand Suns numbers. It's never really stated, but yeah, seeing how they deploy themselves and everything, and then reasoning about some of the big players in the Legion, like Clovis, Araman, Ethel Martin, people like that. Yeah, really good. As you say, it takes a long while to get into the meat of any sort of fighting. When you do, you're certainly rewarded for your wait, I'd say. And probably the other big part which I really like about it is the Conclave at Nicaea.
is a very good part of the novel. The only downside is that the
Seems a
poor
bit
author of
rushed.
this book was absolutely hamstrung by the existing law, that we know how these events play out. We don't know the details, but we know that, Prospero falls, Space Wolves are involved, Edict of Nicaea happened. But the problem is that they don't really sell it to us. Now, I don't know for you, but for me, I'm like, none of it makes sense. It's like, the Emperor could just easily have turned around and just told everyone to shut the fuck up, psychic powers are fine. He could have also pulled Magnus aside and said, look, I'm fine with using psychic powers, but you've got to rein it in. But the way it's handled is very poor. Like, the Space Wolves have every opportunity, for example, to not destroy Prospero. It's like, oh, there's no defending fleet. Oh, no one's opposing our landing.
That's a bit odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, no questions asked, let's just go straight in, and it's... it's a very... Again, it's not the fault of the author at all. It's a very well...
I feel a bit sorry for Graham, because he's basically been given the sort of two massive events that he can't, that he can't change because of the law. They've just said to him, make it work.
Yeah, and poor Graham is the author, he's done a very good job of making it work, but unfortunately for me, it's 90% of the way there, but that last 10%, it's not there for me personally.
How would you rate it if you had to?
Oh, it's a great book. It's a great book.
Great.
I'm picking out the individual bad parts. I would definitely recommend people read it, because I didn't want to just give it a glowing review. I never like to give these books just a glowing review, because there's always a good and a bad, unless it's Furious Abyss.
Or Ruined Storm, but we'll come to that later. Next one. I've just revisited this recently, actually, and that's Nemesis.
The word forgettable comes to mind.
Yeah. My mate was reading it sort of just after we'd done our previous video. I thought, right, I need to get back into this to remember what happens, and he was talking to me about events that happened in this. I was just sat there scratching my head thinking, I really don't remember that. So gave it a go again. I'm going to say mediocre off the bat.
Yeah, mediocre. It's not terribly written, but the thing is, it's sort of a pointless book, because it covers these half a dozen, I think it is, assassins that try to kill Horus, and obviously they don't. And of course, the consequences of that long term are none, basically. I don't know. You learn a little bit about the different types of assassins and how they operate, but you also learn things like they don't work together. And that's sort of like the big thing of the book.
They don't play well together, do they?
Yeah, the big thing of the book is trying to get a group of assassins to all kill him, but usually what happens is one assassin takes a shot with their preferred method, fails.
And then out of all the infinite resources the Imperium has, they decide to, minor spoiler, send a brother and sister to work together who really dislike each other. Which, yeah, that was always gonna end well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just one of those weird plot contrivances. So Nemesis, forgettable, and I won't say it's not worth reading. Like, if you're really a huge fan of the Heresy and you want to devour all the information, you might get something out of it. If you are a big fan of the Assassins, again, might get something out of it, but on the whole, you'll probably find it very forgettable.
You see a bit more of how much of a backstabber Erebus is, if you weren't fully sold on the idea that he was.
Oh, for sure, but I mean, it gets so much more... it gets so much worse over other novels, especially by the time you get to Betrayer.
Oh yeah.
Alright, let's move away quickly.
Talking of Erebus, because he's in the next one.
So, the first heretic. How would you rate the first heretic?
You know, as much as I really, really dislike Wordbearers, I'm quite a big fan of this book, actually. Really liked it. I think the way Lorgar's written and how it's shown he falls is a lot more convincing than how, say, Horus falls, where Horus is stabbed by a magic dagger, has a bit of a sort of weird trip down the rabbit warren, wakes up, right, screw the Emperor. Whereas you can, I suppose some parts of this book, I found myself feeling a bit bad for Lorgar, actually. I don't know about you.
Yeah, this book frustrates me. I like parts of it. I like the way that Lorgar sort of has to turn to some sort of entity of some description. He can't just accept reality for what it is. He needs something to worship. He despairs. It builds his personality. That's great. At the same time, though, it has all these like crappy subplots with like Custodes and Cyrene. Now, that's one of the weird things about the book. There's this chick, and her name is pronounced Cyrene, but then it very specifically
says Cyrene, doesn't she?
Yeah, it has this like very specific line where it's like it's pronounced Cyrene or something like that. It's like, why is that in there? It's pointless to the overall story how I pronounce the name of this character, because she's just some mortal woman, and she becomes like a almost religious symbol to the Wordbearers. But this is another one where the author has been hamstrung by existing fluff in that the Ultramarines humiliate the Wordbearers. But the way it happens with like Monarchia and that kind of thing, you're like, why the hell would the Emperor do that? Like, it's the most counterproductive way of getting your point across. And then, of course, like this whole plotline with the Custodes and Mary Sue Argyltel. I do not like Argyltel as a character. I know a lot of people do, but I can't see past the character flaws. He's a lot like Rey in The Last Jedi and that kind of thing. He's written as like the perfect character with like a flawless moral compass, always trying to do the right thing, and he gets like superpowers and all weird stuff, and he can use a Custodes weapon, and it just it's cringy. It's fucking cringy for me. And so the book is frustrating because you get these great parts where it like fleshes out Lorgar and the fall of the Wordbearers, and then you get these absolutely shite parts where it does poor character building or focuses on the wrong aspects of characters, and does things like throws Custodes in there, and you're like, what the fuck are they doing in this story? And yeah, I have a hard time enjoying this book. I've read it once completely through, and then like read snippets out of curiosity since then, and at no point do I feel like I want to read this book fully again, and because it's just a great book. I'm like, no, if I want to read a book about Wordbearers, I will go and read Betrayer,
which is by the same author, and we will get to that. I believe it'll be the next set, so hang on to your hands for that.
Well, it's a funny thing.
Another plus point for me in this book. It's got the Night Lords in it, and they're not getting battered by someone. So that's
Conrad
always been
Kurz
a
has a
bonus
great
for
cameo.
myself. Yeah, and Sevatar does his death to the false Emperor thing.
Good times. It was his motto that he coined it. He coined the phrase.
Yeah, and some people would have you believe he becomes a Grey Knight. Can't see that one. No, not having that one.
Weird things happening with the Knights Errant.
He also spits at your mate Argyltel, calls him disgusting, and threatens to kill him if he ever sees him again. Which is,
he might be able to do it. I don't know. He's pretty good, the old Sevatar. Very dirty fighter. First Heretic. It's one of those funny things where Aaron Densky Bowden is one of those authors who's, if he's on fire, writing a good book, he is on fire. But if he is, not writing a good book, it really shows. So that's my personal opinion. Of course, some opinions vary, as always.
There's going to be a lot of people smashing their heads into keyboards at the moment, I think.
Well, I mean, there is subjectivity, but there's also objectivity.
When we
do get to Master of Mankind, I'm going to ram home all the things I dislike. But that's for another
time. Talking of frustrating books, because we'll go on to the next one. Roxborough Burns.
Bad.
Yeah, big miss this for Dan Abnett. Who's sort of like Black Library, big boys. Not going to win any friends saying this, but I don't care. God, it's boring.
It's boring and painful to read because, like another novel that we'll discuss another time, Betrayal at Kelth, it's all over the shop in the narrative. Who's telling the story, how long it spends with a person, then it cuts to something so far removed, you lose track of where you're at. It's not written in a way that's easy to take in. Now, it's not saying we're dumb and we can't take it in. I think I'm speaking for both of us here, Sevatar, that when we read this book, it's jarring when it cuts from one section to another.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're gonna do a big narrative about a character, you have to make sure that you've immediately made this character either likable or interesting. And this human guy who we follow throughout. It sort of bored me, and I didn't care about him. I didn't care that he was trying to save relics and books back on Terra. I just really wasn't asked about it because.
Well, I've got a funny story for you here. So when I read this book, obviously this Caspar Horsa guy hangs around with the Space Wolves. Goes to things like Nikea and that kind of thing. But he's being like knocked unconscious and lost memories and stuff like that. And I immediately think of the character Hauser, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in the original Total Recall. And I'm like, hang on, so we've got a guy here who's hanging out on another world, who's lost his memory. Originality much? So
got to be a nod to it, isn't it?
It's got to be. It's also weird with how, like, Nikea was already something that was covered a bit mediocre in Thousand Suns. Somehow it's made worse by Roxborough Burns, because there's like a group of Custodes and Space Wolves just hanging around in like the back rooms and the balconies of Nikea. And then it's like Amon, the equerry of Magnus, is there, but he's not really Amon, and then he like tries to control some Custodes and all this other weird shit. And it's like, what the hell is this doing in this story? It's like, did you put this in just to fill like the run length, fill out the word count? Like, it's painful.
Yeah,
And then it ends with some sort of like demon encounter, and Bjorn loses a hand. And it's, spoilers, because I don't give a shit about this book, and I don't even think it's worth reading for Space Wolves fans. Yeah, you don't get many Wolf books, oddly enough, in the Heresy, but the Wolf books that come later are still better than this load of shit.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. They always seem to be Space Wolf, just. Yeah. Yeah, well, you summed it up quite well, to be honest, Macca. It's,
I mean, I'm harsh,
but the long and the short of it, folks.
I'm harsh, but I mean, Dan Abnett is a very good author. Just like with Aaron Densky Bowden, when he's on fire, boy, is he on fire. And this is something that happens with a lot of Heresy novels, is that, you get one book which is terrible, and then that same author will come along with the next book and knock it out of the park. And you're like, why didn't you knock the last one out of the park, you bastard?
Yeah, it's one, as you said,
So
In
yeah,
fact, to be honest, I know several Space Wolf players, and they weren't particularly wowed by this one either.
no. If you want to read some good Space Wolves in 30k, go read Scars, the White Scars.
Oh yes.
All right. So next book along is an anthology book. Now, the thing with the anthologies,
if I'm correct.
yes. The thing with the anthologies is the further we go into the heresy, the more of them there are, frustratingly so, because they seem to cover off on a lot of the same stories. But in this one, it's at least fresh. So this one is Age of Darkness. What did you think of Age of Darkness overall? And then we'll talk about the individual stories.
Again, as you say, it's like as it was coming out, it was the second anthology. And at the time I thought, yeah, this is a brilliant idea, because what they can do is, instead of focusing on everyone getting their own individual book, if they just like chuck a few stories here and there for people, it keeps things quite fresh for us, knowing what's happening at a certain time and everything. So yeah, at the time I thought it was a good idea, and to be fair, it's not a bad book actually, either, Age of Darkness. But as you say, it's sort of the glaze, the gloss sort of wore off further down the series. The more you got of these, where they sort of just jumped around doing various irrelevant stories and everything. Also got stung by a couple of these by buying it, thinking, oh, new book, not really looking into the details, which I should have, and like, hang on, I've already read this before.
Yep, I know that feeling exactly.
Yeah.
So, for my take on it, I think the first half of Age of Darkness is definitely the weaker half, and the second half is quite good, if not great. And I think I felt exactly the same way as you when I read it, which was, it's a good way to cover those legions that may not be getting a big novel for a long time. Say the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, Sons of Horus, because we're not going to visit them again for a very long time. So when they pop up in here, it's like the appetizer to tide you over until you get a proper book about them. There's some great stories in it, to be fair. So, alright, let's kick it off. Rules of Engagement, the first short story. What do you think of that one?
You know what? When I started reading this, I thought, what the bloody hell's going on here? What are the Ultramarines doing? And then it sort of comes to the end that it's all, the first bit, it's only a scenario. Because I think the first bit they're fighting salamanders, are they?
Yeah, they're fighting other
in this simulation.
Legiones Astartes. It's basically Gilliman's letting his other commanders fight battles and testing them out to see how they can tackle other Marines.
I think it's certainly unique, and it's good. It's good looking to Gilliman's psyche, isn't it? Sort of preparing for everything. I think
is this the introduction of the practical and the theoretical, which are two words that by the end of Betrayal at Calth I want to just strangle whenever they're said.
Yeah, they like to throw that phrase around them.
Yes, that's a story for another time. Go on.
Yeah, it was alright. I really enjoyed it. Like I say, there's one point where you got Ultramarines fighting salamanders. And I was reading, I thought, what in Christ's name is going on here? And then, as I say, you sort of get to the end and realise it's all simulations and everything. And you're like, oh, right, okay then. Yeah, I could dig that. I could see Bobby G doing that.
It's an alright story. It's definitely one of the weaker stories in this book. That's because, again, the latest stories in this book are fucking fantastic, so it suffers from the competition around it. But it's not a terrible story by any means.
And you've got Liar's Due.
Yeah, so I think this is the one where the Alpha Legion dude basically takes over a world by sabotaging their communications, filtering the messages that come in and out, basically turns them to the War Master. Yeah, it's great for showing how the Alpha Legion may operate, but it doesn't make for a very compelling narrative.
No, it's just all sneakiness within sneakiness, etc. Really. As you say, it is good to see. Shows you how the Alpha Legion operate and how effective they can be when results go their way. But apart from that, there's not really too much to say on that, is there?
No, not a huge amount to say. Alright, next one. Forgotten Sons.
Forgotten Son. So this one's basically a couple of Space Marines, a Salamander and an Ultramarine. I suppose they're like ambassadors on a planet, sort of saying, look, the Emperor's not dead, Horus is a bit of a bad guy. Stick with the Imperium, and as usual, things go a bit awry. I think there's an Iron Warrior knocking about, sabotaging stuff and everything.
Yeah, I think well, the world's already enthralled to the Iron Warriors or something in the background. It's probably the more forgettable story in this novel.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah, it's like I say, it's worth a read. We are coming to the better ones now, though, I think. Last Remembrancer. Yeah, I quite like this one actually. Because it's like, as we say with these books, it's just a good little exercise of telling you where people are and what people are doing. And this one's sort of basically showing that Dawn's not sitting there counting his Lego, doing what he's doing. He's sort of, I suppose in a way, he's kind of holding a lot of the Imperium together back at Terra. Bless him. He does clash heads quite a few times with Malcador and Valdor. So yeah, this one's basically Solomon Voss, who's a remembrancer from the Vengeful Spirit, is sent back and he's captured, and it's all about Dawn having to make a very tough call, really.
It's a good book. It's not as good as The Last Church. Last Remembrancer,
very good.
Yeah, it's not as compelling as that, but it's interesting because it deals with basically, here's the state of the galaxy, here's Horus's, this is why Horus has sort of done what he's done type thing, to Dawn, who's not exactly the easiest person to convince of anything, we'll say. Generally enjoyable read.
It's sort of all about Horus getting inside Dawn's head as well, before he gets there, sort of making him do things he doesn't want to do. Next one's a really good one. I'll let you take the read on this if you want, okay?
Yeah, Rebirth. So, some of the Thousand Suns ships, obviously the fleet was sent away prior to the Battle of Prospero. One of these ships comes back and it's like, hang on, what the fuck happened to our planet? And so some Thousand Suns land on the world to try and check it out, and then shenanigans happen. Very enjoyable short story, and actually ties into Scars later on down the line.
Yeah, it introduces quite an important character in the guard. In the shape of a leader.
Review
become very important.
Well, he's not the focus of the story for the Thousand Suns, though. It's this other captain, or his boss basically is the focus of this story,
Calliston.
And a certain notorious legionnaire from another legion.
Yeah, it's an incredibly bloody chap, you might say.
Won't spoil anything, but well worth the read, especially because it's short and what about the next one, the Face of Treachery? What do you think of that one?
Well, this is sort of putting the pieces in place, ready for Deliverance Lost, essentially, isn't it, this book? So it's all about world eaters trying to hunt down the last of the loyalists, in particular the Raven Guard, and sort of opposite side of that, it's about Raven Guard commander and Imperial Army commander coming in to rescue Corax and the boys off Istvan.
Yeah, and this is where it gets a bit weird, because I like this story. It's actually a very good story, this short story, because it takes place from the two different points of view. The commander, who has been told very bluntly by Corax, stay the fuck away from Istvan. This guy gets nightmares about something bad happening, and it's like, no, I have to take the ships available to me, which are defending the Raven Guard's homeworld, and I have to see what's happening in Istvan. The reason he was told not to go is because Corax was like, look, this is an Astartes versus Astartes fight, and basic bitch humans aren't up to it, which is a fair call.
It's Space Marine business.
Unfortunately, Forge World later on down the line puts the Imperial Army on Istvan.
It does.
For no fucking reason, if I'm honest. It's I find that frustrating, because they weren't there in any other literature. It's just Forge World decided to when they got to that book.
And it's not as if they don't sit like two desks apart either, really, is it?
No, it's even more frustrating because they don't even put rules for using Imperial Army in that book. So it's like they're there and you can't use them. It's doubly annoying. But in any case, Corax and his legion on Istvan, basically, the minute that the drop site massacre begins and the betrayal happens and the other legions turn on them, Corax just basically turns around to the boys and he's like, yeah, we need to get the fuck out of Dodge. I love the Iron Hands, love the Salamanders, but this is not a fight we're going to win. We need to fight our way, which is basically run to the hills, fight from the shadows type thing. And it covers
probably
his
the Primarch that should have been in charge for this.
Yeah, unlike Ferris, straight up the guts, lots of smoke, Manus. That's the way Grandpa did it, that's the way I'm going to do it. Yeah, so Corax and the Legion basically then fight a guerrilla campaign, a losing guerrilla campaign. Fight some Iron Warriors, things like that, and then Horus gets fed up and basically says, Angron, take your Legion in and just fucking wipe them. And that's a fight Corax knows he can't win.
Do what you do, Angron. Do what you do.
But yeah, very, very good story, The Face of Treachery.
Yeah. A couple of sneaky Alpha Legion bits in as well.
Yeah, actually, probably a more enjoyable Alpha Legion being Alpha Legion moment in that book than there is in the Lies Due short story, which was about the Alpha Legion.
All in all, good book. Enjoyed this one.
Little Horus.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, there's a Little Horus next. Yeah. No, this is a good one.
Yeah.
This is a good one.
Do you want to take the lead on this one as well?
Yeah, so basically this sets this is setting things up for a book that's quite a way down the line in Vengeful Spirit, kind of. And so basically they go to Dwell to do some stuff that I won't too much spoilers about. And essentially it's a convincing attempt of people trying to assassinate key characters, if you like. So this book sort of it's set after Scars, and it's set just before Vengeful Spirit. I'm quite a big fan of this one, and I think it's probably one of the first, if not the first book, we really see the Scars in it.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's only really the second time out we see Iron Hands, because the Iron Hands really only popped up for a couple of quick cameos in Fulgrim, just to be punching bags, basically. They're kind of punching bags again here, but the plot twist with the White Scars popping up and the story revolves around little Horus. It's all from his point of view, and basically he's having a bit of internal conflict after what happens with Abaddon, Woken, and Torgadon. But yeah, good little novel. Won't spoil the story at all, but everyone
this
gets
is one of these
due.
that's definitely worth a read. Definitely worth a read, this one.
Plus, it introduces us to one of my favourite characters, who I think's only in this short story, and that's Hibal Khan. But, well, he has a good moment in the story, so...
And, introduces Shadrach Medusan as well, which, well, spoiled too much, but poor Shadrach, he's doing his best, isn't he?
Yeah, we thought Corax was fighting the good fight from the shadows.
Yeah, for an Iron Hand, he's pretty damn interesting actually, because some be a bit boring, shall we say, in some of the books. But yeah, to be fair, they've got a cracking few characters, the Iron Hands, and Shadrach's one of them. So I'm within. I'll let you take this one, okay? Because I'm excited about this one.
Okay, yeah, you'll love the next one. So the Iron Within, this is a fantastic story, and it's basically a group of Iron Warriors gets attacked by another group of Iron Warriors because these guys are loyalists and they're manning a fortress, and the guy running the show, Barabbas Dantiok, is basically one of the coolest characters in the Heresy, and his whole job, he pissed off the Primarch. You find out about that specific story in the Perturabo novella, which is much later on down the lines.
Gets a mention in Angel Exterminatus as well.
Yeah, he does. It pops up in a few different novels, actually. So Dantiok's been sent to a backwater to fortify it, and he does a brilliant job of it. And these other Iron Warriors come along and they're like, well, give us the fortress, and meanwhile an Ultramarine's already beat them to the punch, and he's like, look, these guys are traitors to the Emperor. You've got a choice to make. And Dantiok goes, well, I guess I'll keep fighting for the Emperor. And he's a loyalist Iron Warrior, and so it's Iron Warriors versus Iron Warriors in siege, counter siege, and it is brilliant if you want to know about the Iron Warriors.
It's brutal.
Well, I think the thing that makes it specifically brilliant is this is not a book that has involvement by John French, which means they're not mustache-twirling, incompetent Iron Warriors. These are competent Iron Warriors. And competent Iron Warriors are very compelling to read.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. I mean, Dantiok does come back to shaft my Legion quite significantly later on. Yeah, all that aside, really good book actually. And as you say, as much as a bit of a Mary Sue, Dantiok, he is quite a good character. I think he's quite an honest sort of character actually, to be fair to him. We go on to the next one now, please.
Savage Weapons. Would you like to take it away?
I wouldn't mind. So basically, this is again, this is set after the drop site massacre. And I think it's the first time we see the Dark Angels again after the drop site. And basically, the Dark Angels and the Night Lords are engaged in something called the Thramas Crusade, which lasts roughly about 3 years and only has a couple of short stories dedicated to it for whatever reason. Cheers for that review. And I think we'll probably see it in the next Black Book, which will probably be 10 years time or something, I don't know. So basically the Dark Angels and the Night Lords have been cat and mousing each other across this whole sector for 2 years. Sort of ambush, counter ambush, all that good stuff, really getting on each other's nerves. So then Kurz decides him and the Lion should have a bit of a meeting. So they meet on a planet called Segualza, which will become fairly famous one day. and it's about them two having a bit of a powwow. They're sort of trusted advisors, really. So yeah, you got a good bit of backing too from Sevatar and Corswain. Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually. Well, obviously I'm going to enjoy it.
I love Corswain. He's one of my favourite characters in the whole Heresy, so I really get something out of that as well. The fact
he's
that
a bit of a dude, isn't he?
The fact that he can hold his own in a verbal spar with Sevatar says something, and Corswain finishes the novella with one of the best lines. I
Fantastic,
think
isn't it?
Is in the Heresy, yeah.
Can we spoil it?
Yeah, geez, which one of us wants to spoil it's the question.
Well, yeah, basically, sort of, Curz's and the Lion's little powwow was turned into, has gone up a couple of gears, shall we say. And, yeah, Corswain decides to go and give his Primarch a hand. Then, when asked, he's being airlifted out, where's your sword? What does he say, Macca?
I left it in Curz's back.
Bad. See, it's lovely stuff.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Very good little short story, especially, well, it starts, even the start of that little powwow. The Lion shows that he can be a bit of a douche. And not in the way you expect. Like, everyone knows the Lion's sort of borderline autistic, but he does what even the Lion knows he's being a douche when he does it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of these books where ADB was really, really on his A game for that.
And that's the thing, when he's on his A game, it's brilliant, but when he's not, it's painful, because you know he can do better. Yeah, so that's that set of novellas done. I guess we're on to our next full novel, The Outcast Dead. What do you have to say for The Outcast Dead?
You know what, I really enjoyed this one actually. Bit of a breath of fresh air. Yeah, I suppose I was a bit bored of just seeing super soldiers battering each other. And it's it sort of it explains quite a bit about the consequences of Magnus trying his best to contact the Emperor by unprescribed means, shall we say. Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting look at terror and everything. There's a couple of really good characters who pop up. So yeah, I like this one.
I like
You're
it
gonna tell
because...
me you hated this one, aren't you?
No, I like it. It's just a bit of a clusterfuck, if we're honest. Especially continuity-wise. But at least it doesn't do what other books have done, like Roxborough Burns, for example. When it deals with mortal characters, it doesn't go from a mortal character in one scene to Astartes for like 3 chapters and then back to loyalists or back to like civilians for 3 chapters. The book's at least consistent in the fact that it almost is like a novella from chapter to chapter, but it works for this book in the tone of this book, whereas it doesn't for books like Roxborough Burns. I mean, I didn't say that very well, but it's hard to describe what I think of this book.
Yeah, it's got some brilliant scenes there. Like, douchey custodian getting what's due to him. Slight teaser and a little bit of information about Thunder, which is quite welcome, I'd say. Yeah, really good book, this one.
It does sort of tackle one bizarre plot line that's never really been convincingly tackled, and that is the loyalists from traitor legions. Basically, if these guys are not traitors, but for some reason in the Imperium, it's instantly just accepted, oh, your legion's at war with us, therefore you're a traitor and you're under arrest. And it's like, well, why? Necessarily? Like, at least the Ultramarines, like, sent out representatives, like in that short story with Dantioch. The Ultramarines send someone there and they're like, look, here's the situation, whose side are you picking? They don't even get that. The Custodians immediately just arrest anyone.
You can see why these guys are a bit miffed. Instead of, like, the palace sending, like, a Legion representative or something just to say, look guys, here's the news. How do you feel about it? They sort of just rock up for these chaps, the Crusader host, and they're like, right, get in the police car. It's unsurprisingly, the World Eater character's like, no, fuck you. You get in the police car. You've also got a very interesting chap who appears a few times called Yasu Nakasena, who's
is that the astropath?
No, that's Kai the astropath. Yasu Nagasena's he's like the sort of samurai hunter chap.
Oh yeah. I'm with you. The samurai witch hunter guy.
Yeah, he's quite a cool guy. I like him. He's one of them interesting human characters.
I haven't read the Outcast Dead in about 5 years, so I'm I'm going a lot of memory here, and I remember a lot of snippets about it because they were interesting tidbits, especially the Thunder Warrior stuff. I enjoyed the book.
Yeah, cause it
is weird.
It sort of tells you how they're supposed to have. Everyone sold the tale that the last Thunder Warrior died, claiming the last fortress. And yeah, apparently that wasn't the case. Apparently they were cold.
Fucked over.
Not surprising. Yeah, and a couple escape, and believe it or not, they're not too happy about trying to be cold, as you could expect.
Yeah, it's kind of like what happened with Istvan 3, really.
Yeah, a lot of pissed off people. And then, sort of getting back onto, well, while we're on the subject of Istvan 3, but Istvan 5, the next one, Deliverance Lost.
I love this book.
I've just finished listening to it today on Audible, actually, before we did this video.
Would you, I don't know if I haven't asked you this before, would you say this is Gav Thorpe's best heresy novel?
I'd say it was up there. It sounded a bit like Fog on Legon. It's a bit of a tricky one. I'd say, either this or Angels of Caliban, I'd say.
I'd go with this one over Angels of Caliban. They're both good. They're both good. Yeah, so this one, basically, from where that short story ended in the last book, this is the Raven Guard after Istvan and how they get back in the fight, and talks about how what the experiments were that went wrong with the Raven Guard. This is another one, though, where the continuity gets a bit funny, because there's a couple of... hear me out here. There's two things that sort of frustrate me, and the first is when Corex gets to Terra. For some reason, he collapses from his wounds, even though it's been a very long time getting there.
By then, shouldn't he?
Yeah, which is odd. It just seems like it was done for the sake of it. And then he has to go on an Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade problem-solving thing to get this gene seed. Basically, the Emperor gives him the raw genetic material that the Primarchs were made out of. But in order to get the stuff, he has to go through this sort of labyrinth.
It's like sort of Perturabo-esque, I suppose.
I just immediately think of the Last Crusade. Like, spell the name of God.
Yeah.
The penitent man gets entry,
He does pick the right cup, though, to be fair to him. So good on him. Good on you, Corax.
I think there was only one cup, though. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair enough. The
Alpha Legion do interesting stuff in the novel, but where it gets frustrating. As I said, there were two things, and the first one was those weird janky things on Terra. The second is, in 40k, there's this big thing about how Corexit's experiments in 30k fuck with the Raven Guard gene seed. The problem is, his experiments in 30k have nothing to do with the Raven Guard and their gene seed. It has to do with this specific goop that he gives to the Raptor initiates, and that their gene seed, whatever, is not passed on because they're not given traditional Astartes gene seed.
No.
So there's nothing at all that would have affected the existing Raven Guard's gene seed. So it makes no fucking sense.
I mean, the one thing for me I would have liked to have seen a bit more of is that you've got the human officer, the one who had the dreams, this Marcus Valerius. You know, he's sort of set up as quite an interesting character, and he's got his little butler with him as well, who's quite cool. And then he's sort of with him at the start of the book, and then it's almost like he gets forgotten about, and oh shit,
yeah, he just disappears.
Better bring him back. Yeah, it's no sort of like, the trials and tribulations of him raising a new new army.
You bring up a brilliant point there. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go on.
I'm going to name a whole bunch of different legions, okay? And I want you to name the first, Marine you think of when I name that legion. This is just a little mini game I'm going to play within the context of Deliverance Lost. You ready?
Yeah.
World Eaters.
Khan.
Let me think. Iron Hands.
The Shadrach Medusan.
White Scars.
Got to be Torg Khan.
I'm just trying to think of interesting legions to pick from here. Night Lords, of course.
Sevatar.
Dark Angels.
Corswain.
Emperor's Children.
Or Holgwyn. I hate to say it, Lucas.
What about Sons of Horus?
Sons of Horus, probably Little Horus.
What about
I see where you're going with this now.
Space Wolves?
That beardy prick. Beardy prick number one. You know, the one who has the axe.
Yes.
And likes to drink.
Yes.
You know the one I mean, don't you?
Yeah. He's about yay tall, wears wolf pelt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
So, the point I'm getting at here is, name me a interesting space marine of the Raven Guard.
Yeah.
And there's the problem. This story does a good job with Corax. Corax is actually a pretty likeable Primarch, very down to earth Primarch, kind of like Vulcan. You know, he's not really a dick at all.
Yeah, he does care about people,
and he's smart in the way that he fights. He's not like the other Primarchs who are more about heroics. Corax is more like a modern day military general. He moves the pieces on the chessboard and deploys smart. He doesn't just go for open battles. He fights where he has the advantage. You know, uses tactics, that rare thing. But the problem is there are no Raven Guard to grab onto. Even the guys in the Forge World books for the Raven Guard, Alvarax Morn and Kaitis Nex, are not really compelling characters. So all these other legions have these great characters like Khan and Causeway and Sevatar, and then you get to Raven Guard and it's just like the fucking crickets are chirping, and that makes it hard because they're normally the people you follow.
The best Raven Guard character, in my opinion, is not even in this book. He's an Angel Exterminatus.
Yes, yeah.
It's Nightcrawler Sharikin, because he is a dude.
He's a badass, but again, that's the problem. Is in the Heresy books, whenever you have a book that revolves around Marines, Primarchs are interesting, but the Marines are the heart and soul of things, because they're basically giving you the war from the point of view of the average guy fighting it. And when you don't have an interesting Marine character to grab onto, or even a mortal person, in like Betrayer, for example, you have the captain of the Conqueror. She's an interesting character.
Yeah. Just a bit.
Latana Saren, something like that.
Yeah.
Then you've got obviously the Raven Guard have their general, who he disappears from the story after being a major part of the last one. So there's no one there to really ground it for you, unfortunately. And I think that is the big flaw with Deliverance Lost.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I mean, it's an enjoyable book.
It is. It's very much worth the read.
Certainly unique, because, you hear... Spoiler alert, Vulcan lives. But you sort of hear about, the Shattered Legions, and a lot of them are just like, oh yeah, well, we're just going to strike. Do what we can. But, Korak sort of genuinely has a plan to get back into the fight. And, it's not about sort of selling his life, it's about, rebuilding his legion, doing what they do best.
Well, Corax is British. And I don't mean that in the sense of his character, but he fights the way the British did in World War II. It's like, okay, we got our asses handed to us in Europe, we're not out the fight. And in fact, we're going to come back better and stronger than ever later on.
With the colonies.
That's right, whereas the other legions are more like France. They get their ass handed to them early on, and their troops sort of go around with other people fighting the fight. Like the Free French, they join up with the British Army, or some of their ships end up with the British fleet, or the American fleet, or whatever,
sunk.
Yeah, that's not a dig at the French, that's just how they had to fight World War II, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's how the legions are fighting in the Heresy, is like the Iron Hands and the Salamanders especially have basically been shattered by the events of the Heresy, so they just link up with whoever they can and resist however they can.
Yeah, they sort of like the Iron Hands, especially to an extent the Salamanders, they sort of react to it, whereas the Raven Guard recover, if you like.
We've got Shadrach de Gaulle.
Yeah. Poor old Shadrach.
But
I feel genuinely bad for Shadrach.
Oh yeah, same. The Deliverance Lost, though, good novel, worth the read. So, moving along, because I could make jokes about the French all day. No Fear. Would you like to talk people through No Fear? And first of all, I want to know, do you like No Fear?
You know what? I'm a big fan of this. Because I think some of the descriptive writing in it is series, I'd say, when they're talking about the sort of manoeuvres, in the fleet, and particular part where things start to go awry, and it's like naming what's just happened, and it's like, oh yeah, that was like 5 seconds worth of carnage, and you're like, wow. It's very, I think it's very meticulously done as well, which is sort of quite fitting, really, with it being an Ultramarines book. But yeah, the sort of general gist is the Wordbearers rock up under the premise that them and the Ultramarines are going to go and deal with a bunch of orcs, and then a lot is like an exercise of them working together again after the events of Monarchia and everything. And then Wordbearers do their best to stab them in the back, but, well, miss, essentially.
Swing and a miss for the boys in red.
Yeah.
Especially for Corferon.
Yeah, Corferon especially. God almighty.
Okay. This is a hard one for me. I do genuinely enjoy the book, and yes, I think it's worth the read. It is, however, quite flawed. There's two things I don't like. The first of which is the way that the battle sort of plays out in the ground. Unfortunately, it does spend a lot of time like dealing with like the scrap code, for example, and the mission to get that Magos and the Skitari and sort out like the defense grid into orbit. I get that's like crucial to the story, but for me, that's probably the worst part of the story. And that's not to say it's bad. It's just personally not great. The other thing that makes it difficult is the way that it's written. It's written in this like 20, you know, the show 24. It's like that format. It's like, you know, 12:21 p.m. You know, Eastern Standard Time, Ultramarine Ground Forces, Sector Delta 3, and then you get this really short chapters. I feel they're short chapters because just as you're getting into the swing of things, you jarringly get put into another person's chapter, and it happens constantly. So it happens with like Gilliman, and
you're following quite a few people in this book as well, aren't you?
Yeah,
I mean, you've got
that's
Gilliman, Gage, Thiel, who's what a guy. Ventanus, old person as well. He's knocking about in it, doing his perpetual thing.
Yep. Then the Wordbearers characters, of course, that you're following. Then you end up like dealing with like some of the demons that the Wordbearers summon. There's an extended hiatus with like a ground war that's being fought on the exterior of the Macrag's Honour's hull, which a lot of people sort of raise an eyebrow at the circumstances.
Yeah,
a certain
strange one.
Mary Sue that will go unnamed is involved. Yeah, but
go on, name them, name and shame.
Robuda Gilliman is having a fist fight on the outside of his flagship with no helmet on, and it's as dumb as it sounds, because it's like, yeah, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's really not. It'd be one thing for him to say, like, oh yeah, he survived outside the ship, but to have him like getting involved in the fight as well was just that step too far for me.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, some things like that are quite well. I think it's Unremembered Empire, which is same author again, Dan Abnett, and that's Kerr's going outside the ship, sort of scrabbling his way along the hull, and then just like basically knocking on the door, pulling some Dark Angels out, and then getting back in as quick as possible. He's not like standing there having a pitched battle on the hull.
Correct.
Whereas Bobby G can sort of, I think he did it in his underpants as well to make it more impressive.
Well, he's out there for like an hour or two. You know, it's not like it's.
He is there
5 minutes.
a while.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, and the thing that's sort of frustrating about that is it's like it's trying to build up his tension that Gilliman's blown out into space. The problem is we know, you know, he ain't gonna die in the heresy.
No.
So it doesn't really build up tension. It's more annoying that you have to read through the book to get to the conclusion of what's happened with him.
I mean, it's obviously we all know where all the Primarchs end up after the heresy, regardless of if they make it or they don't. And some people have done a really good job writing. I mean, how a Primarch can get thrown about, and I'd probably cite Horus. We know Horus gets terror. I mean, Horus takes such a feel quite vulnerable in it, even though you know he gets there, but you think, oh, you know, he might get some sort of debilitating wound here. So, I mean, in that instance, it's written very well. But in this, you know Bobby G's gonna live. So he gets a bit of nick across his throat because Corferon's just the worst bad guy known to whatever.
Yeah,
like
it was like John French.
Think your typical Bond villain. It's like typical Bond villain. Instead of killing you now and saving a lot of deal, I'm going to do this massive speech where I'm going to give you plenty of time to escape.
It's not even as good as a Bond villain. He's more like a bloody Austin Powers villain.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there's no lasers or nothing, is there?
Well, the thing is, he could kill Gilliman because he has the Athame, the weapon that can kill Primarchs, like the murder sword, basically, the one that was used to fuck up Horus. But instead of trying to kill Gilliman, he tries to turn him to the traitor cause, as if the Ultramarines as the Legion would go to the traitors if their Primarch did.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a weird moment in the novel, and then Gilliman is like, yeah, well, that stings. Anyway, I'm going to punch a hole through your chest and rip out your heart. And he does just that.
And because of the current law, he can't die, which is a damn shame.
A damn shame.
Yeah.
He's written a lot better in the Heresy than he is in 40k. For people who go, oh, you know, if you read the Dark Imperium novels in 40k, Gilliman's written really well. No, he's written much better in the Heresy. Much better. He does stupid things like...
The Ultramarines are genuinely likeable.
Yeah, well, he does stupid things like his fight in space with the fist, but that's basically the worst thing that happens with his character in the Heresy. Like, other than that, it's pretty much smooth sailing for Gilliman.
Well, and you see, like, I mean, you do see a bit of a personality in him, where you see that he is a fallible character. He's not perfect. Where he said, you know, instead of like blasting, I'm trying to think what the bearer's ship is the Lex.
Fidelitas Lex.
Yeah, Fidelitas Lex. I think it. And instead of like blasting it to atoms, Gilman's like, I'm going over there, like, you know, Gage. Captain's like, you know, trying to stop me. He's like, look, but I'm incredibly angry at the moment. It's just that little sort of glimpse of personality, which I really like.
They do a very good job of that in Unremembered Empire too, which is another Dan Abnett one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We won't spoil that now. That's for its own time, but that's a bloody good book too.
No, and I have things to speak of.
Oh, it's definitely flawed. I will always find a flaw, because some people will say that's a negative, or me being negative, but I think you've got to point out the flaws. It is a brilliant book, though. If you're going to critique something, honestly, you've got to look for the flaws.
You've got to. And then on to the last one, Primarchs, which was our third sort of anthology of sort of four. It's a short anthology book. Yeah. Long stories, but a short overall book. I don't even know if you really call them long stories though. And they're very. There's one that I really like, one that I'm mediocre on, and two that I just don't like. I'll be interested to see if you can pick which ones are which. I didn't enjoy Feet of Iron. Yep, bingo, that's a bad one. Reflection Crack, that was an interesting one, actually. That's my good one. That's my good one. Yeah. Go on then, take it away. Okay, so the Emperor's Children are sort of starting to really... Okay, when we did the Emperor's Children review last time, I said they had basically devolved all they can in that first novel. They fell too far too fast, which was my big criticism of it. In this one, it's like the same mistake is repeated, because the very first thing that happens is Fulgrim cuts off Eidolon's head. And then Lucius basically sizes him up and thinks, yeah, I reckon I could take down Fulgrim. I reckon I could spot the flaw in his fighting style. And I mean, love him or hate him, Lucius is a trier, isn't he? Yeah, he is. He dreams big. He likes to dream big, that Lucius. And him and the other captains decide that, look, Fulgrim's off the fucking plantation right now. Like, even though we're like worshipping falling to Slaaneshi worship and that kind of thing, the fact that he cut off Eidolon's head, that's pretty worrying, because who's going to be next? So the captains of the Emperor's Children team up to take down Fulgrim, and then try and
figure out what's wrong with him, and of course they figure out that there's a demon in his body. We've got to get it out of him.
Yeah, only for him to basically demonise himself. Book not further down the line. So, bit of a wasted effort there for the poor lads who sold their lives trying to capture Fulgrim.
Yeah, so the good and the bad in this story. The good is cutting off Eidolon's head, but that's such an important thing. Eidolon's one of those characters like Corferon or Erebus, where when they get their comeuppance, you're just so happy. You know, like Eidolon was such a dick in all the other stories he's been in. At no point do you like the guy. So when he gets his head cut off, you're like, yeah, but at the same time you're kind of disappointed. You're like, oh, that's it. Like, it's the premature ejaculation of novels of the Heresy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens to him, and you're like, oh, really? Like, fuck, that's it. And of course, it's a bit of a mistake because they realise very quickly Eidolon's actually a very compelling character or useful character for the Emperor's Children. We kind of need to keep him in the novel series.
Oh yeah, he basically holds them together essentially.
Yeah, so they can't kill him off. So that has to lead to we now have to bring him back later on, which it's hilarious and yeah.
Spoiler alert, Fabulous Bill brings him back to life. If you hadn't have already guessed that.
Fabulous Bill is fantastic in the Heresy, and it makes you wonder like how he can't actually make better Marines over the next 10,000 years, how they're leading off with the Primaris in 40k, and Fabulous Bill is so incompetent, and yet in the Heresy he's painted as so competent.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's also, people interested in the audiobooks as well, he's one of them characters who always gets a really good voice actor. He's like this sort of croaky, wheezy, evil-sounding mad professor, essentially. Really good stuff.
Some of those audiobooks have some terrible voice acting. It's a very important point that you bring up there.
Yeah. Jonathan Keeble doing Sevatar in Prince of Crows is by far the best Sevatar voice. They seem to have gone towards Transylvanian Sevatar and Night Lords now, which is, it's not too bad, but the first time I ever heard him speak was Prince of Crows was like a moustache twirling villain, so you know, it's how it sort of settles for you, isn't it? When you hear that first voice, that's that sort of ends up as your go-to for that character.
Definitely. I think I'm thinking it's the Magnus audiobook. He has a terrible voice from memory. Like, absolutely painful. I could be completely wrong on that because it's been a while since I listened to it. Alright, Feet of Iron. Would you want to cover off on that one?
If I must.
Shotgun knot, basically.
So, this sort of runs, well, this does run alongside events in one of the Velas, which is Promethean Sun, where it's Vulcan, Ulti, Ferris no Hedus. Well, Ferris has a Hedus in this one. Attacking this Eldar world together. And then, see, I can't really remember too much of this, but I know he goes on like some mad, it's like a magic mushrooms trip or something, as I recall. Ferris ends up sort of getting split off. And then, like, I'm sure he's arsing about in a cave for weird stuff.
It's
like
either the
Gabriel,
webway or like a pocket dimension or something.
It's a bit odd, isn't it? And then Santar and Medusa, and they're sort of knocking about, trying to search him, and search for him and trying to keep things together. It's a strange one, isn't it? It's not a favourite of mine.
It's completely irrelevant to the Heresy. It's character building for the Iron Hands, which is great, but if you want to do that, you should lead off with it as like the prelude in an Iron Hands novel, which they haven't got and never will get, or you make it a story you actually bring out before you actually do the Horus Heresy as a series. And they failed at both of those things. So they're fighting the Eldar on some desert world where it's like the Imperial Army can't fight there basically because it's like a terrible... It's like the Sahara Desert dialed up to 100, so people just instantly pretty much die of like dehydration and heat. The course Marines can fight in that, but then there's some sort of like Eldar shenanigans where it's like the bionics of the Iron Hands can't function. I think it's supposed to be like a cautionary tale about mechanical augments to your body, which, okay, who's that aimed at? It's pointless, boring.
It's a slog.
It's not enjoyable to read. It's one of those ones where, I don't know about you, but if I'm really not enjoying a book, I start to just skip a few paragraphs here and there. You know,
yeah,
does this get better? You know, and if it does get better, then I'll go back and I'll read back to that point. But
yeah, it's unfold.
Alright, the next short story is The Lion. The Lion is essentially the Night Lords ambush the Lion and his ship. It's just one ship, it's not a fleet for some reason, if I'm remembering correctly. And the Night Lords basically commit suicide. They open up a warp portal at point blank that sucks the Lion's ship straight into the warp without any preparation, which is of course really bad for your health. And so they end up in the warp with demons all over his ship, and the Lion has to fucking sort it out.
Yeah, it's a bit odd because I can't really... I mean, if people who don't know much about the Night Lords, they're not really big on self-sacrifice. So yeah, interesting one. Unless it's like, well, yeah, they do not like sacrificing themselves when they could sacrifice their brothers to do it. Yeah, and as you say, Mac, they're sort of in the warp. There's a bit of a conflict going on with the Dark Angels ranks with sort of psycho powers, and how do we fight these demons?
It's a better Dark Angel story than we've had before, but that's like saying that the turd sandwich is better than the diarrhea milkshake you just had.
And I think, correctly, this is what gets his demon navigator thing.
Correct. So it's like the first half they get sucked into the warp, and the Lion figures that, hey, you just stab demons and they'll die. That's pretty easy, really. For him, being a Primarch, it's pretty easy. For the people around him, not so much. One of the chaplains, one who was built up in the preceding stories, is like, no, you can't do that. Remember the Edict of Nicaea? And the Lion's like, I'm autistic, don't fuck with me, and now I'm gonna... That's the second time an interesting character is just killed off out of nowhere. The first was Eidolon.
He actually gets his face punched off, doesn't he?
Yeah. So, two people lose their heads, essentially, in this book. Two characters that were built up in preceding books, just... Alright, your story's over, champ. Which is bizarre.
Bye-bye, Namiel. Bye-bye.
And then the second half, the Lion ends up on this planet, and there's Iron Hands, and they're fighting Death Guard, and the Lion can't really tell who's on his side, so he just treats everyone as the enemy, and then takes the thing they're fighting over for himself.
Yeah, and you got Callous Typhon knocking around the scene for a very long, and then we don't see for a long time again. And it's a bit annoying because there's been Typhon and Mortarion. They've had a big foot attack gone off, but it's to my memory, it's never actually explained that, is it?
No, I think they're meant to cover it in like the next novel. 'Cause the Death Guard are finally getting a novel.
Yeah, buried dagger, rusted daggers.
Something like that. It's sort of alluded to in Path of Heaven, but unfortunately, this is some of the last we see of the Death Guard for a while.
Yeah.
And we don't really see much at all, to be honest.
No. Sort of like the next few books we see.
Yeah.
They're mainly sort of just cannon fodder. Until you get to Path of Heaven and Vengeful Spirit to an extent.
Sorry, I just got totally distracted at the end there because it's actually thunderstorms at my place right now, and when there's thunderstorms, that's when all the spiders come inside. And of course, everyone knows Australia and their creepy crawlies. And there's this massive white-tailed spider, one of the biggest I've ever seen. So, you know, I'm not exaggerating. An Australian's telling you it's a big spider. It's a big fucking spider. And he was crawling up the wall, and he was crawling along the ceiling. And he must have... He's so big, he couldn't hold onto the ceiling. And this spider fell down and audibly cracked as he hit a fucking Panther tank. And now he's crewing one of my Panther tank models. So, I got a real problem because this spider is now up-armoured.
I'm genuinely terrified too, I'm great.
No, I mean, this is a whitetail. They're a dangerous spider. Their bite won't kill you, but it seems to lead to necrosis. Pretty much everyone who gets bitten by them gets, like, their flesh gets eaten away by their bites. So they're a nasty thing. And this whitetail's a good 2.5 inches in size. It's massive. And like I said, now he's rocking around in fucking Wermacked armour, so we've got a bit of a conundrum here.
Macca may potentially be dead this evening, gents.
All hail our new spider overlords.
And I suppose the final one before you depart forever, Macca, the serpent beneath.
Yeah, shotgun knot.
It's very confusing. It's the Alpha Legion, Alpha Legioning, the Alpha Legion.
For some reason, they can't just write a straight narrative with the Alpha Legion. It's like they have to put a fucking gimmick in there every damn time.
It's like, okay, you know, I get their specialities, information, and you know, that kind of shtick, if you like, but they're still giant superhumans in armour with very big guns. We just have a bit of that sometimes, please, without the fucking around arm authorities. You're not, are you?
It's become a meme, but the thing is, the meme isn't funny when, like, every story is a convoluted mess trying to out-Alfarius the next.
Yeah.
It's like, we get it, you do sneaky shit. Can't you just give us, like, a straight-out... Like, that's one of the best things about the Forge World Heresy books, is the Battle of Paramar in Book 3. It's just a straight-out Alpha Legion fighting against Mechanicum and Iron Warriors. You know, in an actual, like, Legion engagement. It's like, yeah, they have their own ways of fighting, like they're sneaky, they use a lot of maneuver, they use treachery, but at least it doesn't try to, like, you know, an Alpha Legion plant doesn't, like, sneak into the Mechanicum facility or some shit, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's. I mean, if you if you're mad for your Alpha League sneaking about stuff, then yeah, this is the book for you. And Seventh Serpent as well. That's going to be for you as well. I don't know. It sort of annoyed me because it was needlessly complicated, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. That's all I can say for that. They're better.
Yeah.
They're better in Scars. They're better in Praetorian of Dawn.
Dawn. Yeah.
Yeah. Go read those books if you want good Alpha Legion. Stay away from the book Legion. Stay away from Serpent Beneath. Stay away from Seventh Serpent. These are my personal suggestions. They do not reflect Sevatar's suggestions.
I mean, Deliverance Lost as well. Bit of Alpha Legioning going on there.
Yeah, actually, a Raven's Flight. Raven's Flight has a good Alpha Legion moment.
Yeah, sorry guys, a bit of a negative one to finish on that.
Yeah, so the Primarchs is a novel. I guess I can't really say it's worth the read.
No, I mean, if you're suffering with sleep, insomnia, get on the audiobook. That'll help you out.
If you're a Heresy completionist, you have to get the achievement for 100% completion of Heresy novels. Yeah, read it. If not,
Good
avoid.
luck.
It's not worth it. I don't think there's anything in there that's really, I have to read this type thing. And we've spoiled everything that's worth knowing anyway, so you'll be right.
Yeah. But on a happier note, do join us next time, because there are some fantastic ones coming. Just 10. There's a couple of stinkers as well, actually. But there's some top books coming up.
Yeah, just looking, there's at least half of those are books I like. Really like. And there are very few there that I look at and I outright dislike.
And it's we'll be covering off on the greatest short story Heresy series. So exciting times for you people.
So obviously there'll be a link in the description below to the first 10 novels that we covered on your channel. So people are more than welcome to go check out your channel and go see that. This episode will probably go up on both our channels.
I'd have thought so.
And
the editors something to do.
Just it's well worth going and checking out that first half, especially if you want a starting point for the Heresy. Go check out Sevatar's rundown on his channel, which we did together, where we cover off on like the Horus Rising, Fulgrim, all those novels. We're really getting into the meat of it now in the next sort of 10 novels or so. It's very much, we've just gone through like the infancy phase where the books are finding their feet. It gets a lot better from here on out, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're into the guts of it now. And probably watch it on Macca's because you have the sexy jazz music in the background. But I'm not as flash as that. So this is the channel to watch it on.
Well, it depends. I might put something in there like Rachel's song 400% slower. I mix it up a little bit.
Excellent stuff. But thanks for having me, Macca.
No, thanks very much for coming on. I always love these chats. They are very hard to sync up because we live on opposite sides of the world and have our work commitments, but
not for much longer though.
That is true. You're coming over this way and we're going to catch up for a beer down Old Blighty.
You're damn right. Be fantastic. And we'll be able to do videos at the same time today, which will be good.
I actually have a Night Lord's army now of quite a few thousand points, by the way. So it's not all painted up yet, but we could actually get that out on the table.
This after. Yeah, you're damn right. But thanks for everyone for joining us all as usual. The Atramentar on my channel, Out with Circlers on Macca's channel. It's always a pleasure. Love to hear everyone's comments, see if you agreed or strongly disagreed with us. keep it civil if you can.
Or not. I mean, I wouldn't expect the people who listen to me to be civil. Some of us are prone to bring out the worst in people, we'll say.
But yeah, that's all from me, guys. So once again, thanks a lot for having us, Macca. We'll speak again soon.
Thanks for coming on, mate, and